الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a blessed evening for all of us. Allow us to return to Him, seek forgiveness for ourselves and for our mu'mineen, inshaAllah. A quick clarification on the moon sighting issue and the controversy or some of the discussions and dialogues that have started recently. And in fact, they're the subject of our conversations almost every year. Once or twice a year we go through this, especially when it comes to the month of Ramadan, the beginning of the month, and most significantly the day of Eid al-Fitr, as it marks the day that we basically complete the fasting, and also in the beginning of the month of Hajj and Eid al-Adha, obviously, as it marks another significant date in the Islamic calendar. The ayah in the Holy Quran regarding this issue in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 189, in Surah Al-Baqarah, the second chapter, ayah 189. In there, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly declares that the way we figure the time is with hilal, with the crescent. And hilal does not exist unless it is seen. What do I mean by that? The moon is always a moon. It never becomes bigger or smaller. The moon is the same size. What we see is referred to as either a full moon or a crescent moon or half, and whatever else the names that are given in different languages. In Arabic, there are different names also for the hilal and the qamar and badr as the full moon and so on. The hilal is what we see, the crescent. The moon is full, always full. But we see the reflection of the sun through the moon, and sometimes we see it based on where it sits in the position of basically between the earth, the sun, and the moon. The earth in the middle, the sun on one side, the moon on the other side, and therefore we may see the crescent or hardly anything, or it would go in the area that is dark completely, we don't see any of it. Then we see a very thin line, the crescent, and then it starts growing bigger throughout the lunar month until it becomes a full moon and back to the darkness, and then another cycle. So the moon never changes. What we see of it is what we call the hilal. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 189, He says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ. It is the time for people, and especially Hajj, especially for Hajj also. When do people perform their Hajj and the day of the Eid al-Adha, or the day of sacrifice? All of that is based on the crescent moon. Throughout the history, things have been evolving in a way, with science and technology assisting, and in some cases making life difficult for us in a sense, or not the science and technology making life difficult, rather we make life difficult for ourselves by not knowing how to use science and technology, or sometimes over-usage and so on, which we see nowadays with many things. We use it in the wrong way, and it's good as a technology, but we need to know where to use it, when to use it, and how to use it. With the introduction of moon sighting websites and so on, we've had basically a course of events that occur with scholars and individuals learning about them and then applying them, benefiting from them in some areas, overusing them or relying on them. And I want to explain here and be very clear. In fiqh, in jurisprudence, Islamic law, there is no presence for the curves of the moon sighting websites. Okay, there's no presence for them in Islamic law. They don't exist. In Islamic law, I explained that last Friday for some of you who were there and for the benefit of those who are listening through the video. In Islamic law, we have scholars who said the moon has to be sighted in your area. And some of them said, okay, if it's seen in your area and any city nearby that gives you confidence, it suffices. Gives you yaqeen, certainty that you could have seen it, it suffices. We have some who have gone as far as saying if you share half of the night with that city that saw the moon, it suffices. Some scholars say if you share most of the night or some of the night, it suffices. Some scholars says if you say if you see it anywhere in the world, it suffices. Some scholars have gone as far as saying if it's possible to see it, it's sufficient. Now, what we are basing our verdict nowadays, most of the people, most of the mu'mineen are based on, and including my position, and based on the following scholars I follow, their position is you have to see the moon in your area. Unless they have seen the moon in another city that gives you confidence and gives you certainty that you could have seen the moon, had it not been for certain barriers, natural barriers, including, and they give example of clouds and mountains. In fact, I want to read the Arabic verdict of the Grand Ayatollah Sistani, which I shared with some of the mu'mineen for the benefit of all, inshallah, where he clearly states when can we rely on the sighting of the moon in another city. So he says, if you share the salawat, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. So amongst the ways or the means through which we can determine the crescent, whether or not the next day is the beginning of the new month, he says the crescent moon has to be seen in your city, and there are means through which it's declared. Two people see it that you trust, and they give their verdict, or it becomes commonly a known fact that it was seen in your city, and so on. Then he comes to a point where he says, if the crescent moon is seen, ruling number 2515. He says, إذا ثبت رؤيته في بلد آخر, if it's proven and it is definite that they have seen it in another city. Balad is a city here, not a country. In another city. وَلَمْ يَثْبُتْ فِي بَلَدِهِ, in his own city it was not seen. If they are close enough, it suffices. مُتَقَارِبَيْنِ كَفَى. And if not, وَإِلَّا فَلَا, if not, it is not enough. إِلَّا إِذَا عَلِمَ تَوَافُقْ أُفُقِهِمَا وَإِنْ كَانَ مُتَبَاعِدًا. Unless if he knows that their horizon matches, even if they're far from each other. So then he clarifies in that same ruling, We have a clarification number 1465. In there, and I've shared it with Mu'mineen, for those who want to refer to the book, they can refer to it. In there, he clarifies what is what does it mean to match the horizon. He says it means بمعنى كون الرؤية الفعلية في البلد الأول ملازما للرؤية في البلد الثاني لولا المانع من سحاب أو غيم أو جبل أو نحو ذلك. He says it means that seeing it in the one city would give us the certainty, or mulaziman, it means that you could have seen it in your city or in the second city if it was not for the obstacle manner, some clouds or a mountain or similar barriers. In other words, if their sighting tells us that we could have seen it for sure if it wasn't for the barrier, then we go by that, we can rely on that. If not, then there's no muwafaqa. Clarifying with scholars who have studied under Ayatollah Sistani and work in the office of Ayatollah Sistani and other maraja regarding this matter and new technology and the variables that we look at when we are looking at moon sighting, I sought some clarification of what is the nearness of the variables. They said there are two factors that have to be there: the height of the moon, or the elevation rather of the moon, and the illumination of the moon, how much light it has. And these are variables that moon sighting sites and the NASA and other sites they provide. If they are matching or close enough between the two cities, it suffices. I can assure you that the elevation and the illumination between us here on the East Coast in Florida or in central Florida, east of the United States, and all the way across the country on the other side of the continent, in fact, in Florida, not even East Florida, but West Florida, Northwest Florida, the variables have changed significantly. The moon is 3 hours older, which is a major variable for those who have experience in witnessing the crescent moon. And therefore, the elevation is different, illumination is different, and therefore they could see it. Does their sighting give us certainty that we could see it? And I ask any of the mu'mineen and mu'minat in our city, if you can tell me that we could have seen the moon, because they saw the moon, we could have seen the moon, that suffices. If you don't have that certainty, then the ruling is you can complete the month. Therefore, we completed the month on Thursday, and Friday was the first day of the month of the Hijjah. As a result, Sunday would be the day of Eid. Now, some mu'mineen mu'minat have shared their concern. Now we have two different Eid within the Shia community and so on. Well, if we were to follow two different maraja within the Shia school for standards, those who follow Ayatollah Khoury, for example, or Ayatollah Wahid al-Khurasani, for example, they can go by the sighting of California for sure, because their sighting happened with our, basically their night. We share majority of the night with California, more than half the night. That suffices for the followers of Ayatollah Wahid, who says at least half the night, and followers of Ayatollah Khoury, which is sharing any of the night. For those, yes, for sure, their sighting suffices. But for those whose criteria, or whose marja's criteria, whose scholars' criteria they follow, is that it has to be sighted in your city, or a city that gives you certainty that you could have seen it, their sighting does not give us that certainty. And if anybody can prove otherwise, I am happy to follow. Then if they can prove that the sighting in Southern California would give us certainty that we could have seen the moon here in Florida. I hope that suffices, and inshallah we have, and I said that on Friday last week, we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this Thursday night or Laylatul Jumu'ah that the return of our Imam is sooner than later, and therefore we wouldn't have to go through all this. We wouldn't have to have any of these issues, because the Imam Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif would clarify. Although some people, even when the Imam comes, they will challenge because of their pride, because of their, we know, we have the knowledge, and therefore even the Imam would be, in fact, would be discredited as an Imam because he differs with their opinions. There are people of that nature. May God not make us one of those. May God make us one of those who are willing to submit when we see the knowledge and we are clear about the knowledge. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala sayyidina wa nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli.